I am excited to come at you talking about some classroom management. I know I am a couple minutes late. I'm sorry. Facebook has changed the way you go live now, and so I was trying to play around with that and make it work. It's like one of these days that it's beautiful outside, so I tried to go out for a little walk because it's not going to be beautiful for a couple days now. So after this, so I tried to do that, and then I got all windblown and stuff. But anyway, so what, right? Hi, Melanie. It's good to see you on here. We're gonna through management. So this isn't going to be like a Zoom training session. I know we've been talking a lot about Zoom, and I think one of the things that people don't realize is that my experience and really expertise comes into regular classroom pedagogy and classroom management, classroom culture. I coach teachers and leaders to be as effective as they can for their kids and for their staff, for leaders. So it just so happens that I use Zoom a lot, and so was able to kind of coordinate my knowledge of effective strategies in with Zoom. So now that you guys are kind of into online learning, I want to be able to do some small strategies. And if you can follow along and listen in, then this is going to help you not only while you're online learning, but I'm hoping to really be able to impact you in your classrooms once you are back with your kiddos. So let's talk. Hi, Katie. Let's talk about classroom management. I will say that to be like super, I don't know, this is so not humble. Okay. I'm just going to say this right now. My superpower, we all have a superpower. Like if I say to you, what's your superpower, and write it down, tell me what your superpower is. We all have a superpower, right? Every one of us has something that we're really uniquely good at. My superpower is classroom management. I have just a lot of experience and a lot of coaching, and I feel very confident that you give me any class and I can work with you to get those kids 100% compliant, on task, and then engaged. But we got to get them on task first. All right, so let's talk about this. So I was watching the news, like I feel like I do all the time lately, and I was listening to what they were talking about, these stay-at-home orders, okay? So you may know or may not. I'll fill you in. Some states have not initiated stay-at-home orders, and other states have. Now, it's really interesting as I'm hearing about how people are reacting to stay-at-home orders. Now, if your state has a stay-at-home order, the data is showing that more people are staying home. It's interesting too, if you remember a couple of weeks, Florida had all those spring breakers on the beach, like super, super close to partying. And everybody was blaming the kids for partying. And I just kept saying to my husband, but they never told them to leave, really, right? Like they never said, this is the expectation, you need to leave, you need to go. It was like they should know better. And I'm hearing more and more about the reactions of when we are very clear with the guidelines, with the expectations, people typically follow them. Now, are you going to have your people that don't? Of course. But more people are following the guidelines of staying home when the state says you have to stay home. That same kind of concept rang true for me with masks. So just this week, they announced that the CDC had guidelines that anytime you go out, you should wear a mask. Now, up until that point, they hadn't said that. So my husband had been doing all the grocery shopping, and nobody was wearing masks, really. It was very rare. Well, then I went grocery shopping yesterday on Monday, 2 days after the CDC put that guideline in, and I kid you not, every single person in that grocery store had a mask on. And I was almost thinking, am I going to be the only one with a mask? Every single person had a mask on. So what does that tell us? To me, I went right to aligning it with behavior. And when we are very clear with our expectations, more often than not, people will follow along. Will there be exceptions? Yes, we'll talk about that. But people will follow along when we are very clear with our expectations. And that's one of the first things that I train teachers on with classroom management. We talk about very clear and precise expectations for every aspect of our teaching. Because when we are very clear and we don't say, well, they should know better, they usually, the majority of them will follow. Now, what do I mean by being really clear? Well, I can go into a classroom, and a lot of teachers some will get frustrated because I can be in a classroom in 5 minutes, and I'm like, okay, I know what we need to work on. In literally 5 minutes. Because I always say, like, if I walked into a classroom and heard you speaking Spanish, it would only take me a few seconds to know that you were speaking Spanish in the classroom and not English, right? I know if you are of this mindset of being very clear with your expectations, and if you know what your expectations are. So let me give you an example. I was coaching a teacher once in 3rd grade. And she was writing on the smart board and writing notes. And some kids were writing notes. Other kids were kind of talking to each other. Some kids were watching her, and other kids were just sort of like looking beside. And I said to her in a conference after, I said, what are kids supposed to be doing right now? Or when you were writing on the board? And she looked at me and she's like, I don't know. It was really interesting. She hadn't taken the time to really think about, when I'm writing on the board, what do I expect my students to be doing? So as a result, they decided. And those that were talking got in trouble. She turned around and said, you're not supposed to be talking right now. And I was like, how do they know that? And she said to me, well, they should know. We just aren't talking. But I think about those kids in Florida who should know not to be close together and all of that, right? But they still had to be told. Okay? We know we should social distance. We should stay at home. But those states that do not have a stay-at-home order, more people are not staying home. Do you see the connection? So we think kids should know when adults aren't doing it. Okay? So let's talk about something I often will hear in a classroom. Like a teacher will say, all right, you guys, let's get ready. We're going to go line up. Okay? So they'll expect kids to line up. Now, when we do that, hi, Annie. Hi, Steph. Some kids will hop. Some kids will skip. Some kids will saunter, right? So they'll talk, whatever it is. It's very often chaotic, and if it's not chaotic, it's inconsistent, right? So when I say to a teacher, how should they line up? She says, very often, well, they should walk, and, tells me all the things, and I say, okay, but you didn't say it to them. Saying it to them is like 90% of the problem. Because if we don't say it to them, they will do kind of the way that they interpret it. And it's not that they're misbehaving. It's that human nature needs to be reminded and told immediately before a behavior. So let's take a look at line up. So instead of saying line up, I would actually say to a teacher, okay, what are they supposed to do with their bodies, their brains, and their mouths? Those are the 3 things that should be part of every single expectation, whether it's procedural or instructional. Bodies, brains, mouths. So instead of line up, what we have to do is say, okay, when I say go, because if I just say, all right, you guys, we're going to start lining up, you haven't even finished saying those words and kids are up, right? And then no, let's go. Come on, let's go. We go back. We have to walk. But we have to be thoughtful around this, okay? Leslie, I see your question about high school. I coach pre-K through 12th grade. We have to be very clear with every single grade level. What do we want them to do with their bodies, their brains, and their mouths? Now, you might not be having kids line up, but let's say you have kids coming in the classroom or leaving the classroom. We have to tell them how to enter. So I would coach high school teachers the same way I would coach an elementary teacher, but we just might use different language. The concepts are the same. So let's say an elementary teacher is saying line up, right? It's got to be more of, when I say go, stand up silently, push in your chairs, and walk to the line with your hands by your side, standing directly behind the person in front of you. When you get in line, look at me. I'm literally making this up, but I know exactly I am a student. I know what the expectation is with my body. I'm supposed to stand, push in my chair, hands by my side. I know what I have to do with my mouth. I have to be silent. Quiet and silent are two different things. And when I get in line, what am I doing with my brain? I need to line up behind the person in front of me, and then I need to look at my teacher. That's a lot of directions all in one. So I might even do a check for understanding, but your kids will know. There's some strategies that we do after that to make sure we're getting them all there, but I'm not going to get into that right now because the first part is really getting your expectations super clear. So if you were in high school, so I would do this with the high school. So sometimes I'll have kids, before they come in, they're lined up outside the door, and I'll make sure they're all looking at me, and I'll say, when I say go, you will enter the classroom silently, sit down at your desk, and start your do now independently. Go. That's very clear, as opposed to go ahead and inside and start your bell work. That's when we get so many behavior issues. That's like saying they should know to do it. Well, those kids should know not to go hang out on the beach right next to each other. So let's talk about an instructional, okay? Let's talk about, instead of saying, all right, you're going to start working in your journal, okay? We're going to say, when I say go, this is this could be anything, but just bear with me, right? Body, brain, and mouth. When I say go, turn to page 52 and silently and independently answer questions number 1 through 5. When you're done, read silently in your Dear book. If you have a question, put your red cup on your desk. You will work silently the entire time. That's so much clearer than get to work on your journals. I am literally saying, if you have a question, you put your red cup on the desk. If you are done early, you're going to grab your silent reading book. Now, then I might say, what are we going to do when I say go? Sandra. What voice level are we going to be at? William. Right? And I might do some checks for understanding. But when I tell you your clear expectations are going to curb so many behavior issues, I promise you they will. So if you're online learning right now, which we all are, start thinking about your clear directions while you're teaching. But this is a really great time. When I coach teachers, we literally have 20 minutes, and then they go right into their classroom, and then we coach, and they try to implement some of the things that we've been talking about. You have time now to think through your routines and procedures and instructional expectations, and start to really kind of re-script them out. What should they do with their bodies, brains, and mouths? I would love to know what you're coming up with. So here you can add in some comments what some of your directions are, and I'll give you feedback on them. But that this is the number one, very first thing. I don't care if you have been teaching 1 year or 25 years. None of us are as clear as we think we are. And when I train teachers in this, I'll do a practice session with them, and then I'm like, oh, that wasn't very clear. We can give feedback to each other. And this is something you will always continue to work on. It's like a little bit of a fluidity of language that takes practice, and you'll always be kind of trying to get it better. But I just want you to be thinking about that now. The only other piece I want to tell you is that, are your expectations being framed like a choice or an expectation? So if you're saying, could you please open your books to page 52? That sounds optional. Could you please be silent? That sounds like it's a choice. So I want you to get rid of the questions and the please, because it's just got to be clear, concise. It's not a choice. And you might not intend it to be a choice, but what you need to remember is it's not about you, it's about your kids. And they're interpreting your language. Your intentions are always where they should be, which is what I love about teachers. They care so much. But how it translates to students is often very different. So the expectation is clear. It is very, very concise. And it says exactly what they need to do, no questions asked. It doesn't sound optional. It doesn't sound like you're doing them a favor. It sounds like this is what you need because I care that you are learning. That is what a Classroom Crusader does. So ask questions, and I will answer them for you. All right, guys. Bye.